It's Wednesday, the 9th of October, another day where we roll up our sleeves and bring you the best. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka in Lagos.
Well, Lagos is awake, not like it ever sleeps, really. Welcome to your perfect day starter. I'm Kayode Okikilu. I know that naturally, because River State has been hogging the news. Well, people, once again, what's the update from River State? Not to worry, we'll give you all of the updates, particularly from the big names in the state, the big politicians in the state. So there's still some update regarding River State, but it looks like the violence is tapering
simmered down a bit.
Some sense. So it's at least some cheery news. But hey, you never know what today holds, but not to worry, that will form a major part of the show today. But there's a lot of talk around, well, the Jebba Dam being released, and people are thinking, okay, what is going to happen with that one? But we understand that that's going to be done in a controlled manner. There will be some areas that will be affected, but it's just a reminder to people that we're not out of the woods yet, or more appropriately, we're not out of the floods just yet. So eternal vigilance, they say, is a price for freedom, or the price of not getting your areas flooded. So let's ensure that we keep our eyes peeled because we're still at the height of the flooding season. So please, 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 don't let's let down our guards.
Speaking of which, perhaps we should just rest assured that this time around things will turn out a lot better as far as the environment is concerned, particularly because of the lessons that we have learned from the Borno update. The federal government has, as a result, commenced or released funds to commence what it calls an investigation on the state of the dams in the country. About time, really, that mitigation efforts rather than emergency response measures are prioritized, such that a few years down the line from now, we're not talking about floods and, communities being submerged whole beneath water. Away from the environment, of course, there's also that concern from, the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria over a disagreement between a passenger and one of the cargo officials. And we understand that that FAN has issued a statement to clarify what exactly happened. And one of the things that FAN would have the public understand is that, the person in question is a cargo agent, and there was no harassment and no request for money by one of its officials. Of course, we're also glad that River State seems to be calm at the moment, and we hope that things stay that way, particularly with reports from the governor that a panel of inquiry, a judicial panel of inquiry has been set up to investigate the series of events in the last couple of days, which, according to the governor, bear some similarity with events prior to this time. And more updates are coming, of course. I'm sure you caught up with our conversation with another big name in the state that also seems to be in the eye of the storm, saying he has asked his lawyers, to make moves to set aside that panel of inquiry. So many things to follow up with this morning, but we have quite a lot more for you.
Yes, so let's get right into it, shall we? What do we have on the show this morning, Bugala?
Quite a number, and it's a full package. We take a break from politics to revisit the economy and review the impact of the floating of the naira. While some say it has eliminated round tripping, others believe that the Tinubu administration policy on foreign exchange has come at a great cost. But how significant are the other gains seen in the recent increase in the balance of trade, and even more recently, the increase in capital importation, which reached $2.60 billion in the second quarter of 2024? So we ask, among other things this morning, do the odds of the Tinubunomics, that's what we prefer to call it, outweigh the benefits? So stay tuned for that conversation this morning.
Well, yes. So we're paying attention to the things that really matter. Well, yes, politics plays its role, but then the dividends of the politics or the policies, democracy is what we're touching on today. And another aspect of development Perhaps the bedrock of it is education. Oh yes. So we focus on the crucial role of teachers in shaping the future of education and the need for their input in policy decisions and adequate funding of the sector. Yet again, another important aspect of governance and development.
And so it's a potpourri of things that we have for you this morning. So also today we look forward to an exciting conversation with one of the OGs. Yes, that's what Jeffrey chooses to call them. The old guards who graced our screens with his handsome appeal and equally compelling acting from the 90s. But some of the OGs age like fine wine, as does our guest. So today, he returns to the big screen, or shall we say, the smart screens of your streaming platforms with a burst of energy and some more of his fineness. Bob-Manuel Udokwu is our guest this morning.
Oh yes, and I imagine you want to update your movies playlist if it's anything like that. But hey, you can be a part of the show. Hashtag CTV Morning Brief as always. We're taking your comments and other trending stories in just about 15 minutes right here on the show. So let's get started. There's a lot to handle on the show this morning, from the economy of the states, the federal government, to education, and of course, the big screens.
So it'll continue unfolding for you after this break with the top stories. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So top on the brief this morning, we'll start in the FCT. The former governor of Rivers State and minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Nyesom Wike, says instructions have been given to his lawyers to approach a court to set aside the judicial panel of inquiry set up by the Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara to investigate those behind the burning of secretariats in the state. He explains that the violence in Rivers State would have been avoided if his successor, Governor Fubara, had followed the rule of law and the pronouncement by the court. He spoke on our political program, Politics Today.
No person who believes in the peace and stability of any nation will say that you want to support violence, will say that you want to support destruction, will say that you don't want people to live in harmony. But what is important is that when there's violence, when there's instability, it is for you to ask question: what has led to that violence? What has led to instability? What has led to destruction? If at all, it's very key. I have said, I was a governor. I've always obeyed the rule of law. You heard the governor said that our state is turning to a state of anarchy where people do not obey the rule of law, where people do not obey the rule of law. What is obeying rule of law? You must respect. You must obey the judgment of courts. A governor came out on national television, not local television, to tell the world, I will not obey court judgment.
Did he say that?
Yes. In fact, to crown it all, he said there was no way in the judgment that the court said the election should not hold. He went as far as to say, I do not need police before I conduct an election. When somebody says, I don't need police, what are you saying? I'm inviting violence. Hoodlums will take an opportunity, saying police will not be involved. In that case, who is the perpetrator of that violence? Governor is the architect of the violence.
For the sake of peace, what in your own power do you think can be done?
Obey. The rule of law is the only thing that can bring peace
And you think that it's up to Governor Fubara?
It is him. Who will support violence? Who will support destruction? Now you talk about panel of judicial panel inquiry. The governor said that this is the handwork of his political opponents.
Could it be you?
No, but having known them, what are starting up a panel of inquiry? You know them. All you need to call police, arrest them, charge them for arson. You know them. You have said so. So what is the basis of judicial panel of inquiry? I know the look. I have told our lawyers this afternoon. Go ahead and set aside those rubbish. That's rubbish.
What will Wike do?
What Wike is
To
going
allow
to
for
do?
peace.
Obey court judgment. Allow the rule of law to prevail. Because if you don't obey the court judgment, if you don't adhere to rule of law, you are bringing anarchy.
And River State Governor Simlai Fubara has inaugurated a judicial commission of inquiry to investigate the violence that recently erupted in some local government areas of the state. According to the governor, the commission was long overdue, recalling that a similar incident occurred about a year ago, which he chose to overlook. Governor Fubara also noted the troubling similarities between the current situation and the events that unfolded before 2013 and 2014, which were marked by courtroom disruptions, arson, and assassinations.
About this time last year, a similar thing happened. And because we believed that we are one family, that whatever differences we have definitely will be resolved internally. But it has become very clear that rather than get close to the path of peace, that this state is gradually turning to, would I say, a kingdom where law and order are no longer the order of the day. And we can't fold our hands and allow such a thing to happen. So I've decided to take this action to find out the immediate and remote causes of this, and most importantly, no matter the personality involved, we must bring them to book.
In other political stories, the People's Democratic Party, PDP women's groups in Edo State have vowed to reclaim their mandate from the electoral umpire, INEC, following the outcome of the September the 21st governorship election. The women took their protest to the Nigeria Union of Journalists Secretariat and the Edo State House of Assembly complex, both in the capital city, Benin.
We are not fighting, but we are just protesting for our mandate to be given to us. This is a very peaceful protest. You see the way we have been going about it, doing the right thing at the right time. We are very, very responsible mothers. We have grandchildren. The police should stay off this. The soldiers should stay off this. INEC should bring all the papers in their possession so that they will read, they will review and give us back our mandate.
Meanwhile, the All Progressives Congress has assured the people of Edo State that work towards the development of the state will commence right after the swearing-in of the governor-elect and his deputy next month, as they are determined to bring progress to the state. The leaders of the party who disclosed this during the party's victory rally for Edo South in Benin City also thanked voters for giving them the mandate to serve.
The governor and the deputy governor-elect are ready to hit the ground running. After wasting 8 years, you will understand why we cannot afford to waste even one more second. And like others have said, we thank Mr. President for assuring that there was free and fair election. Why are we emphasizing this? The president said the election must be free and fair. Even though you will ask yourself, when you see some people doing the thing they did against us in uniform, you will wonder why they do that. But like I said, Once you have prevailed, we have no right to grudge anymore.
I want to thank our leader. From day one, he was with us. Every area we visited, he was there. He was called Osho Baba. For that reason, I believe working for the people pays. And I'm promising you that I am going to work for Edo people.
Away from politics now, the Supreme Court has fixed October the 22nd for hearing of a suit filed by 16 state governments challenging the constitutionality of the laws establishing the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. A 7-man panel of justices led by Justice Uwani Abaji fixed the date after the states were joined as co-plaintiffs and the leave granted for the consolidation of the case in the suit originally filed by the Kogi State government through its Attorney General. The states that joined in the suit include Ondo, Edo, Oyo, Ogun, Nasarawa, Kebbi, Katsina, Sokoto, Jigawa, Enugu, Benue, Anambra, Plateau, Cross River, and Niger states. In the meantime, the Senate has asked the federal government to increase budgetary allocation to federal universities in the 2025 budget to take care of the challenges in Nigerian universities. Lawmakers also resolved to mandate the relevant committee of the Senate to liaise with the Ministers of Finance, Education, and other relevant ministries to immediately take steps to checkmate the increase in spate of brain drain in the country. This resolution comes after a lawmaker, Senator Anthony Okuri, raised a motion on the growing challenge of brain drain, expressing worry over the poor remuneration and working conditions of Nigerian university lecturers. And Vice President Mr. Kashim Shettima has unveiled a framework for addressing malnutrition and food insecurity in Nigeria. The proposed program, codenamed Nutrition 774 Initiative, aims to improve nutritional outcomes across all 774 local government areas in the country. Speaking during a roundtable with development partners at the Presidential Villa Abuja, the Vice President says the initiative aligns with President Bola Tinubu's broader focus on food security and availability across Nigeria. And 15 people have been rescued and 5 others still missing after 2 boats collided in Lagos State. Although there have been conflicting reports about the number of those involved, the Lagos State Waterways Authority, LASWA, said there was no casualty as at the time of the report. A statement issued by LASWA says the boat collision occurred on Monday evening at Imore on the Lagos waterways, involving 2 vessels named Only God 13 and a wooden boat. According to LASWA, at approximately 7 p.m., Only God 13, traveling from Ebuteru to Badagry with 15 passengers, collided with a wooden boat carrying 10 passengers from Alakija to Imore. The statement adds that, fortunately, all 15 passengers on board Only God 13 were rescued safely. However, 5 passengers from the wooden boat sustained injuries and are receiving medical attention. LASWA adds that regrettably, 5 individuals remain unaccounted for and search and rescue efforts are ongoing. And in sports, Super Eagles interim coach Augustin Eguavon says his team knows the importance of Friday's 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier against Libya and must make good use of their home game in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital, to pick all available points. Coach Eguavon admits the absence of forward Victor Osimhen is a big miss for the team, but he's however confident that his other strikers will step up. And we hope that indeed the other strikers will prove to be the Trojan horse, as Osime is famed to be, for that crucial encounter. But what are you saying about the other big stories this morning? Kadi joins me now for a review of your thoughts. Hello again, Kadi.
Hey, well, not to worry. We have Victor Boniface, other strikers who've definitely come through for Nigeria. So wish the Super Eagles the very best in that all-important clash. Definitely will be giving you some insight and some talks on that one. But let's get right into what you're saying. First up is the court decision about Labour Party leadership. Court affirming, get this, Julius Abure as Labour Party chairman. There's been a lot of back and forth there. There was an Inadi Usman leadership that was appointed, and then a lot of back and forth. No, it's not meant to be. The Congress that was conducted is illegal. INEC says, well, we don't recognize him, but then the court has made a decision. So let's see what you're saying about it. First off is Dear Kololaolua, who says, hope Abure has learned his lessons. Okay, now he has to work hard to restore the integrity of Labour Party.
Well, we'll hope so. But it seems that the LP chairman seems to have 9 lives, keeps returning. It's about the second time the court has affirmed that he's a national chairman. But what impact would this have on efforts made by members of the group to set up a committee to look into the leadership crisis and resolve it amicably? Well, the coming days will be quite telling. Elijah 2 Olusegun writes also and says, one court will sack, another court will uphold, you mean to say? Shena 2 judiciary we get, well, sort of asking that do we have 2 judiciary arms of government? Okay, well, next move, Jerry, LP. It's quite telling about the psychology of Nigerians as far as, you know, politics is concerned.
And this is something that we need to fix on time, because it's impugning on the integrity of the courts. We have a new CJN, and I imagine that this would be one of the major issues she will seek to tackle. I don't know if we say that it's technology they need or better due diligence, such that we don't get conflicting court orders. And this pervades politics and other areas of our lives as a nation. The next user, Steezy, right, I think refers to what had played out earlier on with INEC, saying INEC is saying a different thing. The court is saying a different thing. So imagine you say INEC is saying one thing, the court is saying another. Who do we take serious in this country?
Speaking of which, will the other groups within the Labour Party or one of them appeal this judgment? Well, we shouldn't be surprised if that happens in the coming days. But let's go to another talking point this morning. Governor Soludo threatens to seal shops of traders observing Monday sit at home. And this has been a tested situation for governors in the Southeast with varying levels of success in tackling the Monday sit at home challenge. So let's see what some of you are saying about this. Ajibari Talk says, governance through threats won't solve the issue. Engaging with the people and understanding their concerns will go a long way. Dialogue over force. Governor Soludo, peaceful solutions. That's the charge on the governor there.
Yeah, because Soludo solutions, remember that was one of his lines during campaigns. The next user, Baba UCH, says, what if the traders are trying to obey the governor's order, or orders in this case, and they are caught by the Zionist army? What will become of them? Well, I think that's the dilemma now, the conundrum. But the lawful order has been given by the governor, right? And duly elected.
And that's, you know, something very important that the governor should think about, should reflect on. Is the security situation in Anambra watertight, such that if they choose not to obey this Monday sit at home and obey the government, their security, their lives and property will be guaranteed safety. Well, let's go to the next speaker this morning, Theophilus. Okay, let's go to the next talking point now so that we can cover as much ground as possible. The federal government approves Dangote Refinery as the exclusive supplier of jet fuel for Nigerian airline operators.
Well, more like, because he spoke with Channels Television.
Yes,
and he said
indeed.
that the operators came together and they said, you know what, we're going to purchase from Dangote. And he said he gave his blessing.
Approval.
Right, so more like they took the initiative and thought, okay, because of Forex and other costs, let us just go for the smarter option, I imagine, and then they went for Dangote.
Okay, so we could say this is a healthy product of a public-private collaboration. Yeah, so Charlie writes in and says, this is not good news. Sole supply of jet fuel for airline operators means only Dangote can supply, and that means every airline company is at the mercy of any price Dangote inflates on them.
Well, whether you wanted to use inflate or impose or otherwise, I think the point is taken. Rachel has this to say, good to know. No more foreign fuel for airline operators. Price of flight will come down now. I hope it's important to properly contextualize that. We hope. Because there are other costs that come together. So whether or not this will change a lot is what we hope to see.
All right. And that's it. That's as much we can take.
Hey, one more. It's important to tell you that the head of service of the Federation has reintroduced civil service anthems for workers. Now, don't ask me what that anthem is. I'm just giving you the information, right? So the head of service had made that announcement that there will now be a civil service anthem for civil servants in Nigeria. So if you're a civil servant, you better start learning.
You better learn the anthem.
Because,
so it doesn't invite query. Failure to be able to recite it doesn't invite a query. So learn the anthem, and perhaps one of these days we could also get to know what that anthem is.
So two anthems for you, the civil service anthem and the new national anthem. So wish you the best. I imagine this is geared towards fostering productivity and the rest. But people say, well, it's not just enough to change or give an anthem. There needs to be deeper reforms in that civil service. So beyond recitation of anthems, we're rolling up our sleeves now and getting the conversation started. We're looking at the economy and the practicality or otherwise of the Tinubunomics policy. So stay with us. We'll be right back. There's been a lot of talk about politics, and rightly so, from Rivers politics to Labour Party politics, national politics. But, you know, politics is meant to be a means to an end, not an end in itself. It's meant to deliver policies for good governance. So how well have we done in that sense, delivering the dividends of democracy, particularly in the area of the economy? Well, we're joined on the program this morning to take another look at Nigeria's economic health, I should say. Dr. Biodun Adedipe, founder and chief consultant, BAA Consult Nigeria. Dr. Adedipe, you're welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you so very much. I'm happy to be with you this morning.
Absolutely. I wonder for you as an economist and perhaps your colleagues, when you see, and I want to start with the political situation in Rivers State so people can get a sense of what this really means. When you see political crisis, the back and forth, what exactly is usually the real cost of this? Because what people look at most times is they focus on the political actors and then, you know, the back and forth. But then there's a real economic cost to the political crisis, the economy of the area, employment, business activities. So when you as an economist, when you look at, let's say, the crisis in Rivers State, for example, what is a real cost to the people of Rivers State? Then we'll talk about the bigger conversation, Doctor.
All right, thank you so very much. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is the disruption that brings to economic activities. That means, to start with, economic agents, talking about individuals, corporate entities, and even government also, because many agents of government also facilitate, economic activities. So once what they do on a daily basis is disrupted, that is the beginning of trouble within that particular space. And the way it goes is that when we see a crisis, typically we track it in the manner of it destroys economic activities. If that is not corrected as quickly as possible, what will that also mean for people who are unable to go about their normal businesses? And then if they are unable to do that and it goes into an extreme, they become what you call humanitarian candidates. So where are the safety nets? If there are no safety nets, it means it can also blow over into a security crisis. But that is the way we normally trace any disruption to economic activity. So in my mind, this is a major issue, and the economy is fundamental because it connects to livelihood. It connects also to the ability of people to have a sense of security, that is not only financially, but in terms of everything that defines their living. So basically, that's where it starts from. Then we can now take it further and now look at the implication of that for tomorrow. Because anytime, the way we say it in economics is this: the actions that we took yesterday and the implications of them are what we experience today. And in the same way, the choices, decisions, and actions we take today will define our tomorrow, which means it's not just about disruption of economic activities today, but also looking at the implications tomorrow. It means we need to restart those activities, and whichever way you look at it, depending on the nature of a business, it might mean disruption lasting longer than the number of days the political crisis itself that triggered all of this will last. So in which case, the economic effect will last longer than the report or the political crisis that triggered it.
Indeed, because you realize that eventually the government will have to draw funds, funds that are meant for other things, to fix those places that have been burned and all of that. And I think it just reiterates that point you made. So I think that it's mind-boggling that while, you know, states, political actors see the very present challenge, the economic challenge, they still have time to engage, you know, in political brickbats and the rest. When there's almost a sinking ship they're on, you just wonder what the thinking is like in those settings. But let's set the agenda, and that's why we're doing this. The economic indices don't look too good. Some will tell you capital importation increased year on year, but when you look at it quarter on quarter, it's been a decrease, right, at 2.6. That's what we had in the second quarter, and that's down from $3.37 billion. So depends on how you're looking at it, but clearly this is not where we ought to be. And there have been questions about, so is the government really aware of how much effect Tinubunomics, floating of the Naira and all of that is having on the economy? Or they're saying, we'll get better by the day. Let's just keep holding on. So again, when you look at the economic indices, do you get a sense of it gets worse before it gets better, or hey, we need to change the strategy altogether?
All right, thank you so very much. Now, there's what I call my macroeconomic dashboard, and that is what I rely on in interpreting what is happening in the economy and what we may expect tomorrow. Now, you made reference to capital importation, which is very vital, especially as an outcome of how our economy is interacting with the rest of the world. That's looking at the external sector. Now, first quarter of this year, $3.38 billion, and the second quarter, $2.6 billion. When we put that together, that is almost $6 billion US, first half year of 2024, significantly above what we had for the whole of 2023, of course, above what we had in the whole of 2022. So if you look at the trend, and I always like to encourage analysts to look at trends rather than the spot data. If you look at the trend, what it shows is that Nigeria is making some progress in that respect. But at the same time, I will now bring in a word of caution, where we now look at the breakdown of that particular figure of 3.38 for the first quarter, of 2.6 for the second quarter. What is the predominant contributor to that figure we are looking at? Mostly portfolio investment. And that is where it connects to what we started our conversation on, you know, a political crisis. Now, the way it goes is that portfolio investments will come in when they see reasons that are rational, so to say, because investments are rational. So they go to places where they are safe. First consideration is safety when people invest in a particular geography, Nigeria being the one we are discussing. Second consideration is now the return. Third one is liquidity, which means how easy will it be for me to take out my money when I need it. So in which case, they also look at the liquidity of that market. So, and if that is improving, and of course, I will probably, if I happen to be an investor or advising someone to do that, I will look at your external results. How is that behaving? Do you have any unextinguished, obligation that is still outstanding? How does that compare with your liquid, external reserves? Then I go on also and look at your external trade. What portion of your imports, if I compare that with your liquid external reserves unencumbered, how many months of your bills will that cover? So when I play all of those, and then the nuance is coming from government in terms of what you call key government functionaries and their utterances. So all of these define the confidence that as an investor I will have in such environment. Now, if that confidence is sustained, then I will leave my money in that geography. All right. Once there's a question mark on that confidence, then I will look out. So it's not something Nigeria can begin to beat our chest on. That, oh, thank God, capital importation has increased significantly compared to the last maybe 5 years. That we are doing well. Yes, we are doing well. But when you look at the composition, it should give you some concern in terms of how to retain such money in the environment we find ourselves. We then move on to other metrics. Okay, the economy is growing, no doubt. If you look at the data in the last 12 years, there's an upward trajectory in the trend. But it is not growing fast enough. That's the first challenge. Secondly, it is not growing inclusively. Now, the reference to inclusive growth is about employment. We are not creating sufficient jobs to make an impact on what we call the bottom of the pyramid, okay, where the real problem is. So in which case, we want to grow faster, no doubt. They want to also grow in a way that will create jobs. And so the question will be, where are the jobs created? Portfolio investments don't create jobs. What creates jobs are foreign direct investments and also domestic investments in the real sector. And that now brings us to some other metrics. Now, inflation rates has gone very high. But happily in the last 2 months, July, August, it has trended a little downwards. But the question is it sustainable? But there are 3 key words we run through all these metrics. If it is positive, is it sustainable? Then is it sustained? And then is it inclusive? Those are the things we use to measure an economy, whichever angle we look at it. So if we look at the inflation rate, yes, it trended down. Then the question is, why did it trend down? Of course, we know harvest season was some major local staples. So, and the influence of that in the market made prices to down. Yes, please.
So speaking of what is sustainable, do you see a synergy between fiscal policy and monetary policy? And we could just, mention 1 or 2 examples. The flip-flop seen in import tariff as it impacts on, businesses in that sector, particularly those importing cars and other related items. And then that's on the one hand. And on the second hand, the reduction of VAT on key items that was announced recently. Is there any synergy in that? And in the long term, are you optimistic that it will, engender a form of stability in the economy, such that all of these other opportunities that you're talking about will be, will be encouraged to grow?
Yeah, I think most of us analysts we mix up something here. When we talk about an alignment between fiscal and monetary policy, there's a major one that you mentioned now. We always leave out commercial policy. There are actually 3 major policy planks in managing an economy. So now the commercial leg is what we mentioned now. That is with tariffs, import tariffs, okay, even export also carry some elements. So, and that is where also you look at the place of the exchange rate you use in computing import duties. Now, that falls strictly under commercial policy. Now, commercial policy alone can play a big role, and I'll give a simple illustration. Let's assume that Nigeria wants to encourage local manufacturing of shoes, just for illustration purposes. Now, if we want to do that, the proper commercial policy will go in this direction, that we increase the tariff on imported shoes and then reduce the tariff of any components for local shoe manufacturing that is imported.
in such a way that by the time the work produced locally hits the market, it will get to the market at a price that is competitive relative to those that are imported. That is the way commercial policy is managed. We call it an alignment of commercial policy when it comes to the external sector. We don't talk much about that. Now, the fiscal side, in all reality, there's been some good response on the fiscal side. Fiscal side looks at three major things. One is the government's revenue. The second is government expenditure, their spending patterns. And then the third one is what you also referred to, and that is the one relating to tax and other elements in the fiscal policy. Now, tax system and structure, they are two different things, must be designed in such a way as to incentivize production, local production. And I'm happy you mentioned that. Now, the direction the government is going with respect to fiscal and tax reforms, for me, is excellent. But we need to get it through the National Assembly, as the President has said the bills now, and also ensure that we implement. It is one thing to pass the bills into law, have the act signed, but implementation is the critical element. So if we're able to successfully implement this, we are getting in the right direction where we see fiscal policy now complementing monetary policy. Now, for monetary policy, one of the areas that I feel we have not done enough is the exchange value of the naira. Now, for me, willing seller, willing buyer, this is good as a choice. But what are the preconditions? And that is where the real challenge lies. The preconditions will include a robust external reserve. We have done well there also in terms of how it has grown in the last 1 year. Okay? It is in the right direction, no doubt. Equally, having extinguished some inherited matured obligations, that's also in the right direction. Okay, that is fine. But when we play that against our import bills of about $2.99 billion monthly, so we see also a comfortable cover, as we call it. But the real question there is this: is it sustainable? Now, pick a few examples. Now, some 2 years ago, February 2022, Nigeria, Pakistan, Vietnam were in the same position with remittances by diaspora citizens. But between then and now, Pakistan has unraveled and they are in currency crisis. Vietnam also is struggling. Okay? Nigeria had its own experience as well. But as of today, things have changed a little bit for Nigeria. And if you look at, for example, at the recent FGN, diaspora bond, dollar bond that was issued, oversubscribed by almost 100%. Okay, that is a pointer that yes, Nigerians and investors see Nigeria as a good geography to invest in. Also looking at sovereign risk. Sovereign risk now relates to government policy changes. So are those policy shifts in the right direction? The interpretation, in my view, for those that put out over $900 million to invest in that is also positive in a way.
There you go. So looking at the figures yet again, dive deeper, you see that revenue from FDI for the same period dropped to $29 million. And I think it maybe speaks to the point you were making about portfolio investments versus FDIs. One doesn't create jobs. I know there's that debate about, okay, when the money comes in, eventually helps companies expand and creates jobs. But hey, they can always take their money back and the company is back to square one or even worse. So clearly the figures don't look too good, particularly when you compare it again to the same period. And I'm talking about revenue now from FDIs compared to the same period from last year. But let's bring this home, right? Because for economists, you see the dashboard. But for Nigerians, they see a little part of the dashboard, which is their own pocket. So there's macro, microeconomics, and there's my economics. Pardon me to add that to the list of, the different angles. So I'll speak to how we can then begin to make this reflect in my economics, the economics of the average Nigerian. And what they look at, for example, is still the price of food items, the price of petrol, the cost of living, the cost of rent, and all of that. And they expect that government is able to rethink revenue generation such that it's able to provide infrastructure, right, to ease life for Nigerians. And I want to get your assessment of the government's performance in that area so far, particularly looking at what eats the most of our earnings, right? And makes, well, the take home, not able to take us home or take us halfway. So what's your assessment of the government's performance in that sense?
Well, my assessment is that we have just moved a little, and I will explain that. Now, the core element when it comes to inflation that impacts cost of doing business on the one hand, and also the cost of living for the private, resident. I don't want to use the terminology Nigerian. Okay, not only Nigerians reside there. Now, when it comes to that, there has been a little dampening in food inflation, which remains the major element driving our inflation. So the question now is, has the government acted in a way that will bring that food inflation down? Yes, they've introduced some policies. They've taken some actions. But the government needs to intensify action in two ways. One is what I call the low-hanging fruits. And this is not only about the federal government, the state governments as well. In fact, for me, the state governments play a bigger role than federal government in this regard. In the sense that if every state will look back into agriculture, we see a couple here and there that are making some good efforts in that direction. And then we pay attention to those staples that Nigerians consume mostly. If we are able to cultivate those staples in large volumes, and we depart from the traditional rain-fed farming that we've been doing in Nigeria, and now move on to all year-round farming. I was having a conversation yesterday evening with my wife and a few other people on this issue. And I said, nothing prevents us from having 12 cycles of cultivation, even if it's a particular produce that has gestation of 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Now, if we cultivate on a monthly basis, the harvest will also follow serially when we get to the harvest season. So those ones are the low-hanging fruits. So if the governments will now invest in that space, I expect them to invest in irrigation infrastructure, also invest in processing infrastructure, and then storage. So that way we can deal with the menace of estimated 60% of post-harvest losses we experience in Nigeria. That's on the one hand.
Right.
Now, it means, for example, that you can cultivate no longer be July, August, that impacted inflation rate this year. Okay? I brought it down a little in July and August. But it now be a monthly thing that is happening because we are cultivating it year round. Same thing can be done to other staples. All right? Now, yeah.
All right, I just want us to quickly touch on another point, which is focusing more on the monetary policy side of the current administration's disposition. Help us understand the regular stress tests that the CBN says that banks are being subjected to in order to ensure that the liquidity of depositors are safe. And this is vis-a-vis the banks increasing lending from the CBN.
All right. Now, very good question. Ordinarily, the banking sector is said to be a crucial one to the economy for this simple reason. Banks by nature are significant public entities. It means once the door of a bank is open, people have the confidence to go in there, place their money there, go there also from time to time to borrow if there's a need, and they pass the risk acceptance criteria of the banks in question. Now, that means that the doors of a bank open is an indication that the central bank has given that bank a deal of health. Let me say, sound health. So to that extent, therefore, central bank will want to ensure that on an ongoing basis, what it has allowed that bank to do is in line with what exists, which means public confidence in an open bank means that CBN also has seen that bank as healthy and allowed it to keep its doors open. So it's a regular thing to do what we call stress test for banks, especially in times of crisis and when there are also challenges within the domestic economy. That is a normal part of central banking, all right? Now, the other side to it is liquidity. Now, liquidity is at two levels. There's a difference between liquidity within the banking system and then liquidity in the economy. But the challenge of central banking is that the banks are part of its transmission mechanism. That means whenever central bank comes up with a policy, it directly impacts the banks, and so the banks also in turn will impact the economy. When the CBN raises the monetary policy rate, for example, I call it signal rate. When it raises it, it's a signal to the banks to make loans more expensive. In which case, we have seen that the system is too liquid. We want to suck in some liquidity. So make lending, that is loans, more expensive. Right. So that will reduce the rate at which banks push out money to the economy. All right? So, and that is the way it goes. When it goes the other way also, is to release more liquidity into the economy.
Right.
So that everything works for the banks.
I really hope we're able to get around this liquidity challenge, because there are lots of businesses that could use that little loan here and there, and a lot of them say it's really tough to access it, right? Sure. Particularly when you look at the profits before tax that at least 12 banks declared in half year 2024, 3.8 trillion naira. So maybe we need to find creative ways to rechannel that money, plug it back into the economy and ensure productivity. But Dr. Adedipe, clearly a job of work ahead of government, and I must say at local, because we're seeing local government elections, at the state, so hopefully we don't see the political crisis, sit at home and the rest, and at the federal government. But we have to anchor at this point, but clearly this is an ongoing conversation. We'd like to thank you so much for your interventions. Dr. Biodun Adedipe, founder, chief consultant, BA Consult Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
So we've talked about the micro, macro, and my economics, but clearly we'll give you more as the days progress. But we'll take a moment now. When we return, we'll turn our attention to yet another crucial part of our life as a nation, and that's education. So amidst all of the back and forth politically, what are states, the federal government doing about education, and what more needs to be done? That's in a moment. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. So right about now, we're taking a breather from the economy to looking at education, particularly with a view to reviewing the state of teachers. We just celebrated the World Teachers Day, and it is instructive that part of the theme of this year's celebration is valuing teachers' voices, but it's a whole gamut of issues. So we're going to be looking at the learning environment as well, and we have a complete panel that will help us, talk extensively and hopefully exhaustively about these issues. So we have joining us this morning Mr. Hassan Akitoye, Chairman, Nigeria Union of Teachers, Lagos Chapter. Good morning and welcome to the program, sir. Thank you for joining us. We also have joining us Honorable Yomi Adamsing, who is a parent. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time out to represent the children. Thank you for joining us on the program. And we have the last, but definitely not the least, Mrs. Ronke Shoyombo. She's the Special Advisor, Education Sector, Edo State. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
So I'm going to start with you naturally, ladies first, and we'll look at maybe Edo State briefly on the back of this year's celebration, which has as its theme valuing teachers' voices. And the policy of the Edo State government is that the teacher is king. So perhaps a good place to begin will be the 70,000 naira minimum wage, which is key to teachers' remuneration. How soon will that take off? And besides that, help us understand the viability of the policy of the Ogun State government towards improving teachers' welfare in that sector?
Thank you very much, and can I say good morning to viewers? Thank you so much for inviting me. When it comes to teachers, you will see that they are the light in the life of our children that we can't afford to joke with. And so as a state, we've actually prioritized them, particularly in terms of salaries. I mean, salary has been very, very constant. We've never failed them at all. In terms of most of the things that they're asking for, we always do that. However, when it comes to the increase in salary that has come from the federal, that's something that is actually being looked into at the moment. And my governor is going to make a pronouncement on that soon, but is yet to be done. And apart from that, our teachers are quite good, because what we've done is how do we digitize things to make life really easy for them. Most of the things that we were doing manually before has changed completely. So the attendance, you do the attendance in school, we can easily get it from the ministry. So that has made life really easy for them in terms of all the things that they use, their resources. The only thing we're yet to do at the moment, because we've actually, as I said, we've digitized things, and also in terms of all the asking, most of the things have been done. However, there are still rooms, and what the teachers have also done is they have actually put together their lesson plans. You know, we've used the CREAM teachers to bring together all the lesson plans, and we've not just done that. We have also added simulations. So if, for example, you're teaching digestion, we want the children to be able to see how the food gets into the esophagus. So there is PowerPoint, there is a lot of interactive resources coming with that, and those are things that teachers are really looking forward to, that we're going to be launching soon. And they have made it by themselves. So it's not somebody coming to make it for them. We've used the cream of the society to make all this so that we can then launch it out to all teachers. So whatever you're teaching in this division is exactly what you're doing. So what I'm trying to say here is to make life easy for our teachers, so that you're not just thinking about the lesson plan alone, you're thinking of how do I adapt it to the needs of the children. Because at the end of the day, we do so many trainings in Ogun State to ensure that teachers actually understand different types of children that we have. And with that, you'll be able to adapt whatever resources you have to yourself to suit the needs of those children. And those are the kind of things that is happening in Ogun State at the moment. Thank you.
Let me come to Mr. Akintoye, because we're trying to approach this conversation methodically, right? So we'll talk about the government bit, we'll talk about the teachers. I think teachers are king, so you're like the king in this conversation. And of course, the parents. But then there are different levels to this. There's the infrastructure bit, there's the welfare bit, there's the curriculum bit, and then the general output. What kind of students are we churning out? But do you get a sense? Because you'll never find a government that will say we're not doing well when it comes to education or teachers. You never. They will say we're doing great, and you say ask them. So let's ask you, do you feel that, because we look around and we see dilapidation in schools. Parents, or the average parent, might not want to take their child to a public school anymore. Most of them will say private school. Let me take my child to private secondary, private primary, private university. So maybe you can give us a backstory. How did we get to this point? Because public schools were meant to be the best. In fact, you feed the private schools, you set the pace, but that's not the case as much anymore. So what's responsible, and do you resonate with what governments say that we've given teachers all that we can, so they're doing good?
Thank you very much. I am not the type of labor leader who tries to be, economical with truth. At the same time, I don't feel issue from our own point of, sides alone. No government will ever claim that he has not done so much sincerely to them, within the confine of resources available to them. They must have done so much. But the fact is that the best they have offered is not yet good enough for the society. So I am not of the type that will say, government or someone has not done anything. No, they have done so much within the confine of the resources available to them. And the fact is that based on the theme for this year's World Teachers Day celebration, valuing teachers' voices. You know, the simple implication of that theme is that it's not even about the teachers alone. I am using teachers in this context as a symbol of that system, that all the stakeholders within the education, if we want to get it right, our approach to decision making has to be all-inclusive and all-encompassing, so that we will be able to transform that theories to reality. So if we are all on the same page, then, you know, you measure development within the context of where are we coming from. You take the documentation before, now, and where we tend to approach. So if we go along that direction and we are on the same page, that means we will realize that we are not stagnant. Are we moving at the right pace? And I think that is where the challenge is.
That's where the challenge. So let's break this down further.
Yeah.
She talked about PowerPoint, for example, helping the students see what they're learning.
Yeah.
You know, gone are those days when they'll say you should balance a chemical equation, and all you're saying is O2, CO2, and the students don't know what's O2. They've never seen O2 or CO2. All they see is on paper, or they draw computer on paper.
That is even
and they show them how to use computer on paper when they should have a computer. So let's talk infrastructure. She said PowerPoints, for example. How many public schools have a screen in their classrooms that these children can see these things, right? A lot of them still have maybe chalkboards. Those that have improved have the whiteboards. Some of the whiteboards are colored already because they've used it over and over again, so it doesn't look good. So in terms of infrastructure, right? Secondly is our curriculum. This is a world of AI, right? Generative AI and the rest. I know some put it in the curriculum just for it, but how many teachers even know how to teach AI, or you get they are versatile in that area? So are we really teaching our children what the world, you know, what will be relevant in the world out there? I can go on and on, but for those two things, infrastructure and the curriculum.
Now, let's start with the infrastructure. Like I said, we are not stagnant. The fact is that we are not there yet. In most of our schools, if not all, there is no place where you can see chalkboard again. She has mentioned something about the digitalization of teaching and learning. You might not find in all classrooms these digital instruments. But the fact is that even the nowadays children, they are already digitalized in all their activities. So you only need to teach along that direction, give them assignment, and they have all these instruments to work with. You can take your phone to the classroom, even if you don't have screen, and if you have anything to show them, just Google it and you can even take it around. We can improvise. We can't get there just at once. We all know that the nation is crying. There is inadequate availability of funds. But the fact is that whether you like it or not, we are in digital age. And there is no teacher who can teach favorably now without, imploring that instrument of technology. And that is the truth. So in terms of infrastructure, you talk about classroom. Even in those days, to me as a teacher, it's not even about this infrastructure we are talking about that enhances learning, though it is a factor. In those days, because there are two things we should be talking about. Accessibility to education. Around 1980-81, Jakande in Lagos transformed education. Talking about accessibility, how many of our children will have access to education? And they make provision for this half-wall classroom. Today, some of the beneficiaries of that program are PhD holders. It's about having that quality personnel in terms of teachers who is well trained and continue to be trained so that will be able to deliver and improvise with all those, instructional materials that we are talking about. And you will get the best.
And Mr. Kitori, I wonder if the challenge really is lack of availability of funds, or rather the judicious, expenditure of those funds. And we're going to bring that back to Mrs. Shoyombo. But let's come to Honorable Adamson. Now, you are a parent in Lagos. Kari has raised quite a number of critical issues that have to do with infrastructure and learning equipment, and whether we're really preparing the children for this knowledge economy that is, what is obtainable the world over. Tell us about the feedback that you're getting. You're a parent of children in Lagos, and we know that parents are paying more increasingly for learning and for the welfare of their children, for those who are in the boarding houses. So are you getting value for your investment in a school in Lagos?
Thank you very much. I will just say that in Lagos State government is trying. When you look at the time of Jakonde, you see the foundation rightly laid down, and it has continued like that. Even up to the time of our present president now, you realize that he formulated so many policies helping the children, educational system. It get to a stage, you see, in time of WAEC, students no more paying WAEC. And when you go to those schools, you'll be amazed. You see computer system everywhere. So it's working. I won't say it's not working, but there should be a motivational factor behind all these things. The teachers must be highly motivated. They must be well paid. There must be training, in-service training, train the trainers. All those things must be there. Because if you say you have equipment, and those people that will be the facilitators of those equipments, they are not well trained, those things will just be there lying fallow. And that has been the system in Nigeria. So we need to work fast on how we send these teachers for training all the times. Then the impact will also always be fed by the parents, that no, even in the public school, we put our children there. So in abroad, many people send their children to public school because it's working over there. But here, some people will prefer private school. That will not deceive you. Even in the public school in Nigeria, as I'm telling you, especially Edo State, I saw a student that finished from public school. When I say public school, you should know the one it's not the boarding system, a local one. And the guy is a medical doctor today. You understand what so it's one of those boys I brought up. So what am I trying to say is that you look at that kind of tendency, that means Lagos State is laying good foundation. They are doing well, but they need to improve.
Are you sure about that? Are you sure that that is satisfactory because of the reported mass failure in WAEC in 2024? Over 500,000 of students failed. We could look at that figure critically and derive portions of failure in each state, but that's a general assessment. So are you sure that it is satisfactory enough?
You see, one thing I said concerning that, there are in two ways. You are giving impact to students. Are students assimilating the same? Are they working towards what you are giving out? And you look at the digital age that we are. Many children, they have given out to digital system. When they're supposed to be learning, they are on that computer. They are on that phone. So you see the impact. Well, I told my children one day, I said, look, in our own time, there's nothing like phone. I said, if there are phones like this, many of us will be a first-class candidate in the university. But we still try our best, even without it, because we study hard. We'll be in the library from morning till night. So that is it. So digital age is already driving them away from the academics. So we need to quickly work on it.
Fantastic point you raised there, Honorable Adamson, because we don't want to don't want to get to a point that school will now be playing catch-up. I think that's already happening. Schools or the academic sector playing catch-up. So the children are advanced, and then it looks like the academic sector is behind. So they do phones, coding at home, and when they get to school, it's back to the Stone Age, right? And that is a challenge. During your time, I think the biggest development was books. Right? And you had books in school. So you go to the library in school. But now children have access to tablets, laptops, and phones at home. Right? But when they get to school, we take them back to books. So let me come back to you, madam, and get a sense of what government is thinking so that you can meet these children. Because, hey, the average 3-year-old, 4-year-old would get your mobile device or a laptop and work on it. I know on the 10s that are learning coding already, but then they go to school and they say, open your textbook. And they're like, no, I can do more with this. So what is the thinking of government to ensure that school is no more playing catch-up? School is now setting the pace. Because at this rate, children might think, what's the point of going to school? I can stay at home and learn these things. In fact, they see their teachers and they say, my teacher doesn't look like they are paying my teacher well enough. So this education is not working. The children now are smart. So what is the thinking of government?
Thank you very much. Because we have to be careful that we're not just looking at the public school sector, but being holistic with the way we are thinking about things, really. Because when it comes to private schools, when it comes to basic education, you can see that the performance at the two sectors are very, very different. And that's because we need to be honest about it, that government is trying its best. However, there's a need to have a roundtable discussion to review and revamp education policies generally. Because there's no doubt about it that, I mean, when you look at private schools and you look at public schools and you ask me, why is the performance here much better than this? Number one, leadership. And when we look at leadership, I'm not saying leadership in public schools, they're great. However, how many people have been empowered to be able to actually talk to the children the way they should? Because everybody is comparing the education in the past to what it is now. Number one, when you look at the private sector, you will see that because a lot of parents are paying for their children, they take law. Sometimes some parents will take law into their hands, the way they nag the teachers and so on. So there is disciplinary issue. A lot of children, the behavior is appalling at the moment. And but in some schools where leadership is tight, where people are very focused, it makes the learning outcome to be much better. So we've got to be very holistic of how do we do this? What do we do? Because a lot of parents are sending their awards to public schools. When people send their awards to public schools, some people will tell you that it's because I can't afford private school. That's why I've sent my child there. But at the same time, do they have enough resources? Do we have enough conducive learning environment? And I'm coming out of Ogun State now because I know in Ogun State we've done a lot when it comes to renovation of schools. But generally speaking in Nigeria now, that if we look at education in Nigeria, there's a need for us to have a good meeting that, okay, let's see, because there is like a lackadaisical attitude generally in the system, you know, because the way you can talk to your teachers in private school will be different from the way you will talk to your teachers in public schools. But you still have teachers that are very, very well clued up because they have the heart that I am for these children. I want to give the best to my children. So you have that. So there are issues, there are gaps. So in terms of renovation, we've got to look at renovation of schools. In terms of what kind of education is being given to the children, because you mentioned quite a lot of things about the alpha generation child. The alpha generation child needs a lot with IT skills. And so that means we've got to review and revamp our policies. In England, for example, you can't teach in England if you're not an IT, if you don't have the competence with the IT.
But pardon me, may I come in there? But are we doing enough to revamp those policies? I mean, in Ogun State, the governor had cause, you know, to even acknowledge recently that one of the reasons that the investment in the education sector is not impactful is because the counterpart funding for UBEC that is being expended right now is for 2018 and 2019, and there are some schools that have still not been reached. So it goes back to that point of whether government is prioritizing funds in other aspects of infrastructure than in specific sectors like education and health. In this case now we're talking about education. Yeah. So is the substance really going to education, not just in Ogun State, but in other states?
Yes, I mean, that's why I said in some states, yes, people have actually put education on their front banner to address issues. However, it is not every state that has seen the power of education. Because if we get education right, it will sort out a lot of problems in Nigeria. So there's a need for us, because, I mean, talking about Ogun State has done, and I'm not just saying it because it's my state, but it's because of what we have seen, that now you can see conducive learning environments, you understand, and that made a lot of difference. However, there were some things you raised about the issue of, do they have ICT skills? You know, those are things that we've got to look at. And part of the things, there are some communities that we have seen in Ogun State, because there's no way any government can come into power and say you're going to trash every problem overnight. You cannot. You know, but there are some community areas that we have seen where there were no computers whatsoever for children. What are we doing? So we're getting the tech hub, like tech space, so that it can serve like 7-8 schools together, so that children can access. Because if we're not careful, we'll be churning out children without IT skills for secondary school level, for primary school level. Then we've done a lot of disservice to them with this particular generation, because they cannot benchmark themselves with the other children out there. So that's why, to me, I said we're not just looking at Ogun State, but we must look at how do we prioritize this for every state. Lagos State has done tremendous work on when it comes to digitization. However, there are still states where children are still lacking behind, where they still don't have all these resources. And also, how do you also train the teachers to make sure that they are very good for the 21st century standard? And that's something we have done in terms of STEM.
Right.
You know, we did a lot of trainings on science, technology, engineering, and maths for teachers.
And it's important to keep this conversation on the front burner.
Yeah.
There's a tendency to talk about politics, talk about other things, and then we leave behind the most important part. Because this is where we groom the children that will go into politics tomorrow, and then we complain. You know, I heard the case of, and I think you can find this across border community, and they realized that people were not doing well when they write the UTME, right? And they were wondering what's going on, and they realized that those students, when they get to, you know, they use computers for UTME now, that will be the first time. It's usually the first time they see a computer. So it takes them 20, 30 minutes to first understand this computer, how do I go about it? So it's taking a private individual to build an ICT hub for that area. And you imagine other communities that don't even have those private individuals. So I want you to speak to the challenges of teachers, because there's a lot of weight on you. You need to have teachers that are up to date, have ICT skills. I don't even know how much of your teachers can code, right? And then maybe teach these students about artificial intelligence, because that is a trend today. So what are the challenges you face? What is the feedback you get from governments when you say, well, we need to be trained, we need to be remunerated? What's the feedback you get from government as to why we cannot fix all of these problems overnight, as she said?
It has always been the issue of funding. Like you have rightly pointed out, there will always be scarce resources. But what percentage of the one available are we really appropriating for education?
Just to reiterate, what is the goal? Because there's the agreement that we should give at least a percentage.
A certain percentage.
Is there any government that is doing that percentage?
They are all far away from it. The highest we have witnessed is like 10%.
When we're meant to be at 15.
When we are meant to be at 15. So that is just the truth. And we must continue to come together and talk about this issue if we want to salvage this country. You see, there is every state, especially in Lagos, we normally have training. In terms of infrastructure, we have, 70% of our schools of modern, infrastructure. But this technology we are talking about, we all realize that you can't even operate technology without energy. Is it not an obvious problem of a nation? The head of school, out of the little learning course is receiving every month, is to procure fuel for running generator in school. So even if the computers are there, most of the time they are locked up, maybe because of unavailability of funds to procure fuel. And this disco, power is not there.
Maybe schools are on band A anyway.
I can't imagine.
Band B, sorry, pardon me, sir.
Yeah, I can't imagine. However, Lagos is at the forefront Others are looking up to them. But they have not really gone far.
Well, Ogun is here. I don't know if Ogun will agree with you.
I have my school. I have a very bad scenario to print to show that we are not doing enough and we are not being sincere in ensuring that we develop education. My school is Ikeja Junior High School, very close to Honorable Commissioner, the Commissioner of Police Office. Where you go along that Muiz Banire, at the end of that road, turn left, you will see building for Lagos State Building and Control, something like that. Go and look at the edifice. You see how, you know, the kind of modern equipment running on generator, just because probably is a, you know, fund generating agency of the government. Go to the debt management office. Go to those parastatals of government who are actually generating, you know, fund for the government. Go to school. Can the school be equipped at that same level as those?
Because they're generating more than funds. They're generating human capital. Schools are generating human capital. So there should be
you can see the kind of premium we place on human life. Despite the fact that we are saying that, oh, Lagos is doing well, but you can still see comparison. And when you go to the, you know, other country where they are getting it right, you see the kind of facility you have in school. Which of the students who knows that is going into that school where will be comfortable will not, you know, come there promptly, cooperate with the teacher to learn? It is obvious. But I think the parents need to do more. We are employee of the government. We can only do our own bit in terms of agitation, and especially when our remuneration has been taken care of, because in Lagos State, by every 23rd or 24th of every month, we receive our salary. We have our promotion as our when due. Leave allowance is going on. The little training they could do, they are doing it. You know, you can't cross your line because I have jurisdiction. I can't be talking so much about...
Yeah, but are you earning the minimum wage already?
Parent.
Are you earning the minimum wage already? 70?
You know, this is a very technical issue. When we say minimum wage, it has to do with that person on grade level 1, step 1, must collect nothing less than 70,000. That is already operating.
But there's no consequential adjustment.
But the consequential adjustment has not been done in virtually any of the states. Even those states who profess to have done it, they have not done anything.
And you know, your commentary just is instructive, yet again, about the theme of this year's celebration, moving beyond what is comfortable for government to do to what is excellent, you know, such that the teachers can compete with their counterparts across the world. But before we wrap up this conversation, let me come to you very quickly, Honorable Adamson. Let's address that matter that, you know, trended a few weeks ago about the increase in boarding fees for students in Lagos State model colleges. Has that issue been addressed?
No, the issue is still generating a lot of misunderstanding. There was a letter that came from the state government, from the commissioner's office, actually been written by the PAMSEC. So that's an increment in school fees, sacrosanct, you know. So, and when that letter came out, the students were supposed to resume on the 15th. And letter came out on the 13th, which was Friday. That letter came out around afternoon. And students are supposed to come back to the hostel on Sunday, which was on the 15th. You can see the time lag. So, policy makers, at times, they are lagging behind. They are lagging because when you look at it very well, you know students went for holidays that was not less than 2 months, or let's say 6 weeks in average. And there wasn't anything later that need to be given to the stakeholders, to the principals, or calling the stakeholders, the parents, the parent forum, generally, to a meeting. Then you talk about increments. So that they will be prepared for that. So I will just tell you that in a social concept, which we call Nuremberg, there's a problem there. There's no informed consent. That is Nuremberg. There's no informed consent. So, and in any situation where you want to make a policy, so many stakeholders must be participants on the table to discuss the issue. So when you bring it out, they know you are coming. So
basically consultation.
Consultation, there wasn't...
Not that you don't agree that there needs to be more funding or at least more money put into education.
There should be more funding because of the economic issue now.
All right.
But when you come out with that exorbitant, you see, when you look at average people that send their children to this public school, they are poor of the poor. I will not deceive you. I can afford it. Others can afford it, like we're sitting down here. But we look at the generality of affordability. Would they be able to afford it? 99% might not be able to afford it.
And some parents have more than one child.
Some have 4, some have 3.
So how much is being paid right now?
It's 35,000 naira. And it is being raised to 100,000.
It is being raised or it has been implemented already?
Let's implement it because there was another letter when they called the parent forum to the meeting at the State Assembly. So we had a meeting there. So by the time we had meeting there, so our executive went in with the commissioner, maybe commissioner representative and the school principals that are supposed to be there, and the district officers, the House of Assembly rep.
Pardon me, we're totally out of time. Just to say that it's still being implemented.
So when they, let me just...
No,
by the time
we're
they
out
just
of time,
went
but just to be sure, it's been implemented. Meeting, right?
So it was agreed that they should go and pay that 35,000, then they will now call them for a meeting.
All right.
So instead of that meeting, another letter now came out again. That 100,000 is sacrosanct.
All right.
Not going back.
All right.
So there is no consultation, which is a bad policy.
We're totally out of time. Pardon me, sir. Let's just say...
I think I have little analysis to do.
We have reached out to the Lagos State government to capture their right of reply, particularly to this matter, and we hope that we'll get a reply in the coming days. But we must anchor at this point, and thank you profusely, gentlemen and lady, for your time. We've been talking with Mr. Hassan Akitoye, Chairman, NUT Lagos Chapter. Thank you so much for your time. Honorable Yomi Adamson, a parent who joined us here also in our Lagos studio, and Mrs. Roke Shoyombo. Thank you so much for your time. Special Advisor, Education Sector, Ogun State. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And from here to another exciting conversation. This time around, we'll be speaking with Nollywood great Bob-Manuel Udokwu, who joins us shortly. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Well, we all love to watch him on our big screens, whether he's a villain, a lover boy, action figure. It's just always want to see his face. So what we've done is, hey, how about we bring him right here on the Morning Brief so you can see his face yet again. Ladies and gentlemen, we have joining us Bob-Manuel Udokwu, actor, movie director, one of Nollywood's greats. It's good to have you on the show, Mr. Bob-Manuel Udokwu. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You heard the voice. I'm not sure if you'll be a villain on the show this morning, or you'll be a lover boy, or you know, the hero. But speak to us. A lot of people have been asking, where have you been? I'm sure for those who follow, they know where you've been. But you're nearly 60 years old, right? So you have a lot of experience under your belt. And you're looking young, I should say. You hardly tell. So what have you been up to? Maybe past 5 years or so?
I've been in Anambra State, my state, political appointment. Currently, I'm the special advisor to the governor of Anambra State, Professor Charles Chukwuma Soludo, CFR, on entertainment, leisure, and tourism. That's where I've been. I'm still also very big part of Nollywood. I mean, we just showed a clip of a movie that's about to be released on Netflix. So, very much around.
Fantastic, and it's good to see that clip. I'm sure a lot of people will be queuing to stream that movie, something for the weekend. So how then do you still do politics, governance, and other associated issues around that, like the office you're in right now? And you still get time to be on the set, because I know set life in itself is a huge job of work. So how do you balance that right now? We'll also get into your story, but I'm just curious, how do you juggle both?
You know, if I were a medical doctor and I have a political appointment, it won't stop me from practicing medicine. If I'm an engineer and I'm in government, it won't stop me from being known as an engineer. So being a professionally trained theater artist and actor, again, remember, my portfolio in government is entertainment, leisure, and tourism. So if I don't go in there into Nollywood, I mean, an industry which I am part of the pioneering practitioners, how would I advise the government of Anambra State on how to leverage on the huge, huge potentials of Nollywood? You know, suffice it to say that as practitioners, we know how to arrange for our shooting schedules with producers and directors of movies anywhere in the country. And so they make provision for people like us who are engaged in state or nation building, representing Nollywood in our states or at federal level or at any other level, to be able to still be part of Nollywood. In other words, they can schedule your recording for weekends, you know, when you are not officially at work, to come and do your bits and then go back. So I think that's part of the way to manage it.
Suffice it to say that, you know, you're like Daniel. You know, you've served 3 different administrations in Anambra State in similar capacity in the entertainment field. Former Governor Peter Obi, former Governor Willie Obiano, and now you're serving Professor Soludo. We'll get to that bit later about your impact in that field in your home state. But I like history, and my earliest memory of you is when you emerge from the pool in that montage for the Checkmate series from the 90s. And, you know, it's as if that was a defining series for your contemporary in Nollywood. How impactful was that series for your career and for so many of, you know, the other Nollywood greats in that generation who seem to, you know, live in our subconscious? And I could mention quite a few names, but you are the one we're celebrating today. So let's go down memory lane briefly.
Yeah, I usually say that Checkmate was my launching pad to, we can call it celebrity status or stardom, or being in the public consciousness of Nigerians that this guy has some talent that we need to watch out for. The late Amaki Igwe, bless her soul, had confidence in me enough to cast me for that role, fresh out of the university, and not one of the Lagos crowd back then. You know, I schooled at the University of Port Harcourt in River State, where I studied theater arts under the late Professor Larotimi, who wrote The Gods Are Not to Blame. So being part of Checkmate was really, really fundamental to my growth as a performer in this country. You know, so it was for me a chance that I couldn't afford to let slip by. You know, I was actually in final year when we started filming Checkmate, and it was no mean feat coming from Port Harcourt virtually every 2 weeks to come and shoot in Ikorodu, where our major camp was back then, and then go back and continue with my studies. I had a goal, you know, I had a goal to make a difference, you know, but I didn't know we were going to be part of an emerging industry, which is today a multi-billion-dollar industry all over the world known as Nollywood.
All right. Profound. So The politics part of it now, you've served 3 different administrations. Talk to us about that. Your first, of course, degrees in theater, but you've also done an MSc in political science, I believe. And you have somehow managed to be so valuable that you have served in Anambra State for 3 different administrations. What have you done differently that has, caused you to so be retained? And would you be pursuing your political career beyond appointive positions to elective positions in the near future?
I know that will come. Anyway, my involvement in government in Anambra State started with former Governor Peter Obi in 2013, but it was brief. He brought me in the last year of his administration, and before you know it, it was campaigns and all that, and he went. But we were beginning to lay the foundation of making people aware that Anambra State is a place where creativity thrives. There are many of us in Nollywood and even in the music industry. I mean, they're all out there performing. And then Governor Obiano's administration, we tried to do a couple of things. One of the profound things that was done, and that has never been done anywhere, any state in Nigeria, was a concert we did on Easter Sunday of 2017. It was called Pop Stars of the 70s, where we brought 10 top bands from the Southeast that were there in the 70s, made waves like Sweet Breeze, Action, Rinka Experience, Semicolon, about 10 of them. We brought them on stage on Easter Sunday. We tagged it Resurrection Concert. And it was huge because a lot of people didn't know that those musicians of the 70s were still alive. Many were alive, many were active. They could still play, and they actually played live in Anambra State. It was awesome. Now, the current administration of Professor Charles Chukwuma Soludo is doing something differently, not just in entertainment industry, which I'll come to, but I'm glad you just had discussion with some people about teachers. Governor Soludo has done so much in terms of education in Anambra State. For instance, less than 9 months in office, he recruited more than about 5,000 teachers. And as if that wasn't enough, down the line, he added additional 3,015, making a total of 8,115 teachers from about 17 states across the country. So for him, it doesn't matter where you come from, so long as you pass the exams and you have the requisite qualification to teach students, pupils in Anambra State. It doesn't matter where you come from, you are recruited. And you see, he says something like this, again, he's a teacher. He tells us that he's a teacher, he's a professor, so he wouldn't joke with his own profession, or those who practice it. And then the education of the youths, young people in his state, being a world-class teacher. And so he tells us that a pupil doesn't care where his teacher comes from. A parent doesn't care where the teacher of his children come from. The important thing is impacting knowledge on that child or those children to be able to face the future. Most of us attended public schools.
Right.
And I don't think any of my teachers came from Ogidi, my hometown. The late Professor Laro Timi, who I regard as my theater father, is a Yoruba man. But then I learned so much from him. So it doesn't matter where your teacher comes from, but the knowledge he or she impacts on you.
Now you can understand.
Now, in entertainment industry.
Right. I was saying.
Anambra State.
Please go. You can land on that point. You can land on that point.
Spending billions, building huge infrastructure for entertainment. For instance, there's what will turn out to be the biggest theme park in West Africa is being built in Oka as we speak. Solution Fund City. billions is being spent there.
Well,
when it's done, by this December, it will be in use.
Mr. Udokwu, you can understand why Bukola then
sites.
asked, she then asked when you are going full-time into politics, maybe there will be more things to come ahead. You're already speaking a lot about it, but a lot of people still know you as the, Bob-Manuel Udokwu of the big screen. So maybe let's give them more of that, right, and see what politics will bring in the coming days. Bukola, like many other women, remember that you coming out of the pool, and it's etched in their memories. I don't know. I was just going through social media, and you still see a lot of women saying, it was my crush that year. I don't know how you handled all of that and and stuff, but a lot of people see.
Well, I see.
Go ahead.
I see those who say that as satisfied customers. Your fan base, as huge as it gets, is because they are satisfied with what you're doing. And I'm not surprised. When I was, back in the days when I was at the University of Port Harcourt, I mean, everybody from the Vice Chancellor to the security men at the gate knew me because I was very active. And thank God for providing me the platform in Checkmate to be able to let the world see what talent he had given me. And then at some point in my career, I became the anchor of Gulder Ultimate Search.
Exactly.
The first, the biggest, and the best reality television show in the country. I now have the record of being the longest anchor person.
There you go.
So when people express satisfaction or admiration for my work as an actor, I feel humbled, I feel happy,
okay.
I feel I feel thankful to God for the opportunity. Some don't have it.
Let's quickly merge things together.
The platform.
Right. Let's quickly merge things together because of time. We never have enough time with Nollywood greats, but let's see what we can do. So new movie coming out. You played a pivotal role. I heard people saying Bob-Manuel Udokwu is in that movie. I'm definitely watching that movie. It's coming out in a couple of weeks, we understand. But there's the deeper conversation around ensuring that Nollywood is able to hold its own and be as big as Hollywood, because we have the stories, we have the people, we have the minds. What else is missing?
Collaboration. Collaboration. I said this years ago that Nollywood has come of age. I mean, we don't have to do anything more to prove to the world that we have world-class talents here. There's this conversation about Idris Elba being cast to play Okonkwo in Hollywood's make of Things Fall Apart. I don't have anything against that as an actor, but I think that we have people, top-class actors in Nigeria who can play that role even better, knowing where the story is coming from. But that's a story for another day. What Nollywood needs now, which I said years ago, is collaboration, and it's beginning to happen. I happen to be part of another production that involved two major actors from India and another Hollywood-based actress anyway. Her roots is from Ghana, but she's based in LA. We need to have more and more collaboration with our counterparts in Europe and North America. That's the path to follow now, and I believe that it's beginning to happen gradually, and we'll eventually get there. The bundle of talents we have in Nigeria is awesome. I mean, I recently traveled to France and Germany, and I know the kind of reception that I got across board. Strangers, total strangers who see you at airports or train station or bus station and surround you to take pictures, and you wonder how they know you. We're great ambassadors of this country out there. I say the prophet has honor except in his own home. But also, I think we're highly respected here as well. I have to thank the Nigerian airline industry. Most times when I travel within Nigeria and, manage to buy your ticket, economy ticket because of the economy, and they see you, most times they upgrade me to business class.
Well, we can say that they are satisfied customers as well.
People should do more.
Right. I think we can say they're also part of the satisfied customers of Bob-Manuel Udokwu's product.
Oh, they are.
We have to run right now. But just to be clear, are you 60 yet? Because the last year some people were congratulating you on clocking 60, or you're 57. Quickly.
I answer that question almost every day. Okay, I'm up to 60 years, so you can now regard me as a senior citizen. But then I refuse to grow old.
All right. Senior citizen Bob-Manuel Udokwu, who has millions of satisfied customers. Make sure you see that movie and much more coming out in the coming months and years. We have to thank you so much for your time and wish you the very best. Hoping you can mentor much more in the industry. Bob-Manuel Udokwu, actor, movie director, and of course, someone who satisfies his customers. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Well, of course, he's also senior special advisor in Anambra State on arts and entertainment. Fantastic work. Well, Bukola, we have to run now.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for being there. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Sunrise Daily is next. Stay with us right here on Channels Television.